Ripple keeps announcing major partnerships. The SEC lawsuit is largely behind us. RLUSD is expanding. The XRP Ledger is preparing for one of its biggest upgrades yet, with new features designed to improve DeFi, tokenization, and developer capabilities. So here's the question millions of XRP holders are asking. Why isn't XRP moving? If all this news is so bullish, why does the price still feel stuck? Every time a positive headline appears, social media fills with predictions that XRP is finally about to explode. Then a few days later, investors are left asking the exact same question. What happened? If you've been holding XRP for a while, you've probably experienced this frustration yourself. You watch Ripple announce new partnerships. You've heard about institutional adoption. You've seen legal victories. You've listened to analysts talk about the next big catalyst. Yet the price often refuses to react the way many people expect. So, is the market ignoring XRP? Is it manipulation? Or is there something much bigger that most investors simply don't understand? Today, we're going to separate emotion from reality. Because once you understand how markets actually price assets, like XRP, a lot of what seems confusing suddenly starts to make sense. And it all begins with one of the biggest misconceptions in the XRP community. Many investors assume that Ripple's success automatically means XRP's price should rise. It sounds logical. If Ripple keeps winning, shouldn't XRP keep winning too? Not necessarily. This is where it's important to separate two things that often get mixed together. The first is Ripple, the company. The second is XRP, the digital asset. They're connected, but they're not the same thing. Think about it this way. Imagine a company builds the world's most advanced highway system. That's an incredible achievement. But if very few vehicles are actually using those highways today, traffic remains light. The infrastructure exists, the potential exists, but demand hasn't fully arrived yet. Financial markets work in a similar way. Ripple can continue building technology, expanding partnerships, and improving infrastructure. Those developments create opportunity. But opportunity alone doesn't automatically create buying pressure. For XRP's market price to rise sustainably, there has to be increasing demand for the asset itself, not just excitement around Ripple as a company. That's a distinction many investors overlook. This also explains why positive headlines don't always translate into immediate price action. Markets don't move simply because the news sounds good. They move when buyers and sellers change their behavior. If the market has already expected a piece of news, much of that optimism may already be reflected in the price before the announcement is even made. That's why experienced investors often say, markets price expectations, not headlines. And once you understand that principle, a lot of XRP's recent price action becomes much easier to explain. But there's another piece of this puzzle that almost nobody talks about. Even when institutions decide they want exposure to XRP, they often don't buy the same way retail investors do. And that changes everything. So, if Ripple's progress doesn't automatically move XRP's price, what about institutions? After all, we've heard for years that banks and large financial firms are interested in blockchain technology. If that's true, shouldn't institutional buying be pushing XRP much higher? The answer is more complicated than most people realize. One of the biggest mistakes retail investors make is assuming that institutions buy assets the same way they do. Imagine you decide to buy $2,000 worth of XRP. You open an exchange, place your order, and within seconds the transaction is complete. Now imagine a global financial institution trying to purchase tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars worth of a digital asset. If they place that order on a public exchange all at once, the price could move dramatically before they even finish buying. That's why large institutions often approach the market very differently. Instead of making one massive purchase on a retail exchange, they typically work through professional trading desks and structured liquidity providers designed to handle large transactions more efficiently. The goal isn't to manipulate the market, it's to reduce unnecessary market impact and avoid driving prices sharply higher while they're still building a position. This is standard practice across many financial markets, not something unique to XRP. But here's where another misconception begins. Many investors believe that if institutions are interested, the price should immediately explode. In reality, institutional adoption is usually slow, deliberate, and carefully planned. Before deploying significant capital, organizations go through extensive compliance reviews. Risk management teams evaluate exposure. Technology departments test integrations. Legal teams review regulations. Executives assess whether the technology fits long-term business objectives. These aren't decisions that happen overnight. They're measured in months and sometimes years. This is also why infrastructure matters so much. Recently, the XRP Ledger has been preparing several major upgrades focused on improving developer tools, DeFi functionality, tokenization, and user experience. These improvements are designed to expand what can be built on the network, creating a stronger foundation for future applications rather than guaranteeing an immediate price increase. Think of it like constructing a modern airport. Before millions of passengers arrive, the runways must be completed. Security systems have to be installed. Air traffic control must be operational. Terminals need to be ready. None of that guarantees a busy airport on day one. But without that infrastructure, large-scale growth can't happen. The same principle applies to blockchain networks. Infrastructure comes first. Adoption follows, and only after adoption reaches meaningful scale can sustained demand begin influencing price over the long term. That's why many experienced investors pay close attention to network development, rather than expecting every positive announcement to create an immediate rally. But there's still one major question left unanswered. If Ripple is building, if institutions are preparing, and if the XRP Ledger continues improving, why do so many investors still feel disappointed every time another bullish headline appears? The answer has less to do with XRP itself and much more to do with how expectations shape the market. So, why isn't XRP moving despite all the good news? Because markets don't reward headlines. They reward sustained demand. Legal progress matters. New partnerships matter. Major XRP Ledger upgrades matter. Institutional interest matters. But none of these guarantees an immediate price rally on their own. The market is constantly asking one question. Will these developments create real, long-term demand for XRP? If the answer becomes yes, price will eventually reflect that. But markets rarely move on our timeline. They move when expectations change and when demand consistently outweighs supply. That's why focusing only on today's price can sometimes cause investors to miss the bigger picture. Instead of asking, why didn't XRP pump after this announcement? A better question is, are these developments making XRP more valuable over the long term? Because if Ripple continues expanding its ecosystem, if institutions gradually increase adoption, and if the XRP Ledger continues adding meaningful utility, those are the kinds of fundamentals that investors should be paying attention to, not whether the price jumped after a single news headline. At the end of the day, every investor has to make their own decision. Some people see a price that's gone nowhere. Others see an ecosystem that's still being built. Only time will reveal which perspective was right. What do you think? Why do you believe XRP hasn't reacted to so much positive news? I'd genuinely like to hear your opinion, so leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more evidence-based XRP analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.